Alright, so ProffieOS4 is now in beta. So we've got all the alpha testing done. There's a few things that need to be tested in beta, but everything is pretty solid. So if you've been waiting to get in, you can feel free to jump into the beta testing. But I just wanted to kind of catch up. So I've done a lot of videos on everything available on OS4, but I've done it in pieces. So now I wanted to kind of go through for those who haven't been keeping up, and then also just kind of as a benchmark to where we're at. So one of the biggest things coming with OS4 is the responsive controls, which is basically what it is in addition to swing speed, which was in 3.9, there's now several other responsive controls, which what they do is they allow your blade, the effects on your blade, to react to what's happening to the blade. Similarly to how you have smooth swing for your sounds, now there's actually the controls of the angle of your blade as well as turning of your hilt can also now adjust the effects. So if you haven't seen any of the responsive stuff, I'm going to give a quick run through, but I do have more in-depth videos on all of it. So one of the big things with the responsive controls is the ability to do localized lockup, but have it actually respond to the angle of your blade. So in the past, localized lockup would have been an animation that would have moved through the middle of the blade. And basically whenever I made them, I had an animation on it just so it looked more realistic. When it just sits there as a color, to me that doesn't look very good. It doesn't look like what you'd see in the film, because in the film you'll have the struggle of pushing back and forth against your opponent, and that where those blades meet should change. So I put an animation in the old ones. Now, with the fully responsive controls, you don't need to use an animation. Your actual movement of the blade is going to move that. So I'm going to show that here. So I get my localized lockup, and now as I move defensively towards me, that lockup section slides down. And as I move towards my opponent, that lockup section moves up. And it responds in real time to the angle of that blade. So now you can actually have the most realistic lockup possible using the responsive controls. Another use of it is for both blast and clash. In the past, blast and clash would have been a randomized location on your blade, which looks good, but particularly with the lockup, what you want is if you clash with somebody, you want that clash section to match up with your lockup. So now, using the responsive controls, your clash and your lockup are going to stay in sync with each other. And then in addition, blast now, instead of it being just random, your blast effect will actually respond to the angle of your blade as well. So instead of it just randomly appearing on the blade, you're controlling where that blast appears just by changing the angle. And then we do have some new effects coming to ProffieOS4. So in the fork we had lightning block. Now that's going to be in the main OS. So with lightning block, there's actually a combination. It's got a built-in animation, but then it also has responsive controls on it. So this is the responsive lightning block. So you get your lightning dancing along your blade, but if you turn your hilt, you can actually change the intensity of it. And then as you bring your blade up, once it's horizontal, it'll actually focus that attack in the middle of the blade. So that's lightning block. And then there's another new one, which is melt, which is meant to be as if you were cutting through an object. And that's also responsive. So I can... Oops, that was a lockup. So now, by turning your hilt, you can actually heat up or cool down the material. So it goes from a red to a yellow to an orange just by turning that hilt. So that's melt. And then we've got several other ones. There's a stab animation, which is similar to melt, but it's a one-off. With melt, you actually control it. Stab just does the animation. And then for drag, it's also responsive, where you can increase or decrease the size by turning your hilt. So those are the responsive effects. And then another responsive capability that's built into this blade is a responsive ignition delay. So particularly for cross guards, this version here is what I'm calling dual mode. So when my blade is pointing up, the blades all ignite at the same time. Now there isn't a sound file attached to this. That's probably a future upgrade. It's going to use the same ignition sound whether you're pointing up or down. But now, if I point my blade just below horizontal, I'll get the delayed effect. And you get the delayed ignition on the Quillians. So this uses responsive controls to trigger your side blades, and that's just another feature of responsive controls that you can add in. And basically, any effect you want now can actually be controlled using the responsive capabilities. And then on top of that, there's a lot of other effects added to OS4. So actually, let's switch out. So, this is a responsive flame. So this is, I'm calling this version Real Flame. And this uses, it's a fire blade, it's made to look like an actual flame. And this uses the responsive controls to actually change the speed of the flame. So when my saber's pointing straight up, it's going to be the fastest of the fire. And then as you move it down, it'll actually start to slow. And it responds in real time to the angle. But then, as I get below horizontal, the flame actually is going to really slow down, and it's actually going to start to shrink. And you'll see that until I go straight down, it actually shrinks the flame, and it adjusts the colors and the speed accordingly. So now that fire is responding to the angle of the blade as well. And then as you come back up, it'll pick up speed and it'll brighten. And this one I'm calling Flame Control. This color group is the Real Flame, which has the full mix of reds, oranges, and yellows. But then this has that added feature now. When you turn that flame to the ground, it actually is going to start to shrink in size, as if you really had a fire pointing down. It's going to want to come back up on itself. But then once you get it back straight, it'll pick up speed and it'll brighten. So that's just another use for responsive controls. And then this is a brand new effect for OS4, and this is the Preon effect. And what it is now, in addition to the Preon sounds, you can actually also set effects to run during Preon. Now this one has a special Preon that Jesse Kirkbride made for me. That's running the exact length of time I need. It's a very long Preon, because what this is supposed to be is it's called overload, and what's going to happen, I'll let it do it. So with this one I have an 8,000 millisecond Preon sound file and an animation that's tied to it. And what it is it allows me to do as if the crystal's building up power, and I call this one overload. And then when it hits critical mass, it's going to ignite out. So I'll show that one again now. So you're going to get, you'll start with a smaller area and it'll slowly gain intensity. And then it'll power out once that Preon runs up. So you'll see it'll get more intense. And then it ignites. And that's just, now the Preon effects though, they are timed to the sound file. If you don't have a Preon file, you won't actually see the Preon effect. And if you have a very short Preon file, then the animation will only be as long as that file. So the way the Preon effects work is they're timed to the actual Preon sound file. So I'm sure developers, the sound guys, will put more and more of these together. But in order to get the full effect, that's what you're going to need. And then in addition to the Preon effects now, I've also, in my library, I'm adding a bunch of other enhancements, I'm calling them. And they just let you customize the blades. So one of the ones that I've got now is a force boost, kind of like a video game. So with force boost, when you activate, oh, this one doesn't have force boost, I spoke too soon. This one does. So what you're seeing right now, that's the passive battery monitor. And passive battery monitor is another new feature. So passive battery monitor, when you change fonts, or when you boot, or there's also a version when you retract, it's going to give you a quick visual indicator of your battery level. So let me toggle back. So this font doesn't have it. When I switch to the next font, it's going to give me a quick color, and green being full power, and then red being low power, and then yellow being mid power. You're going to see that. So right now I'm yellow, so I've been using this battery for a while. It's starting to get lower. It just gives me a quick visual cue how my battery is. So just by changing that preset, I get it and it gets out of the way. So the passive battery monitor is something you add to the style, and it only shows for a few seconds on the blade. It doesn't stay there. You don't need a separate preset. It just gives you a quick little note that, hey, my battery's about halfway done because that one was yellow. If it was green, you know you're good to go. If it's getting orange or red, you know, hey, probably time to charge it or get a new battery in there. But now let me get to that actual force boost. So this blade, when I swing it, it just stays normal. So this doesn't have swing speed or anything built into it. But using the force effect, when I activate the force effect, it's going to give me a 30-second force boost. And that force boost is going to, this one's called aura and swing speed, or force swing speed. So this one's going to give me a little bit of a aura to the saber. It's going to change the look of the saber for 30 seconds. And then when I swing it, so right now I don't get any change in color, but when I used force, you'll see I get this white force aura. And now as I swing it, it'll start going white to yellow. And there's different versions of this. And this effect will actually last for about 30 seconds. And my battery's getting low, so I already know that it's starting to mess with my colors. And then after the 30 seconds of force boost, it'll return to normal, and now it goes back to normal. And there's several different ones on the library already, and there'll be more coming. But that's just another new feature we have. So lots of new capabilities. The other part of ProffieOS4 is the introduction of layers, as well as a lot more efficiency in the styles themselves. So you'll actually you should be able to get more styles onto your saber, because Frederick did a lot to make the code simpler, but also make it take up less space. So a lot of optimization. But lots of stuff coming for OS4. If you haven't, if you want to take a look at it now, it is in beta. You can download it and play with it. I have my library up. But then once it's all tested out, it'll be released. But just so much coming for OS4. This is only the tip of the iceberg too. There's just so much more possibility. So I just wanted to give everybody a kind of a quick update on everything that's coming.